This is just kind of a short overview of OpenBazaar, kind of how we use libp2p and IPFS, I guess, to some extent, and just maybe some of the kind of challenges that we have that are kind of specific to OpenBazaar and kind of, how we address them or at least trying to address them. So we've got about 10,000 monthly users. This data is taken from, we just recently added in some opt-in reporting metrics into the UI, and I think they extrapolate that out and get the 10,000 monthly user number. It's probably only several hundred of them online at any one given point in time. I think the primary way that our users seem to want to use OpenBazaar is to just kind of open the app, browse around, see if there's anything they want to buy, close it out, or maybe open it up, check to see if they have any sales, close it out. So they're not using it the way maybe people use IPFS, where they just keep like a long-lived daemon process running on their system. So this creates kind of a good deal of challenges for us with like data persistence and this sort of stuff. We do have the ability, the daemon can be run on a VPS, and the UI, we have like a client-only UI where you can connect to it on a remote machine. And that's probably like, maybe the ideal way to run it, to just kind of keep the store up and running, but I think it's only a handful of people who actually kind of go through the trouble to set it up that way. So I'll talk about what we're kind of doing to try and address that. Tor, I wrote this onion transport for libp2p that we use in OpenBazaar. This was like the most requested feature that we had, was for people to be able to use it over Tor. It's probably only about 5% of users, but they tend to be like pretty hardcore users, like people who are real enthusiastic about the project. It's people who are non-Tor users are kind of the people who come in, check it out, and then maybe don't use it again or something like that. The big issue that I think we have with Tor is that almost everyone who uses it, so you have the kind of like the novices who will just use like Windows and then use Tor, and so that makes up probably about like half of it, and actually kind of works well for those people. But then you have like the really security heavy people who are running on like Tails and Unix, and the way I have the transport set up is it connects to the Tor control port and tries to configure a hidden service that way to take incoming connections. And on these operating systems, they have the control port locked down. So for people who are running on this, they're actually not able to take incoming connections. So it's probably like the majority of Tor users can only do like outgoing because of like the operating system they're running on. I have done some work. I didn't merge it yet. I haven't really had time to kind of go back and tweak it, but I made it so you can like manually create a hidden service by just editing your Tor config file, and then you can stick the onion address in like your IPFS config file and start up that way, and it will use your like manually created hidden service. And that kind of gets around some of the issues with the control port, because you don't need the control port in that case. But then there's some other issues. Tails still has like other issues if you try and do that. I had to write like a bash script that you had to run like every time you start it up in order to make it work. But so it's possible to kind of get around those limitations. There might be some other things, and if we're going to talk more about like the onion transport, we can see what we can do to kind of get around that. The DHT, because our users are like, the way you find another node when you enter their like peer ID into OpenBazaar does an IPNS query to get to pull up their store data. So the default for the libp2p DHT is like records only persist for like 24 hours, or they expire in 24 hours. So for us, that would be kind of like, if a user opens the app, kind of publishes a store, closes it out, if they don't sign on like tomorrow, then their store is not visible to anybody. So this was probably like the main impetus, I think, for just kind of like separating the network and having like a separate DHT implementation, was just to bump up that record TTL up to like it's 1 week. So 1 week seems to kind of be about right for us, because it's like if they haven't opened the app in longer than a week, they probably abandoned their store, and I don't think we want people seeing like abandoned stores anyway. So their content sticks around for about a week, and then it kind of goes away. So we do see quite a bit of like churn due to people who are just kind of like testing it out, put up some data, and then it kind of goes away. But the speed of the IPNS queries, right? I know some people have mentioned this before. If we just kind of use like straight IPNS, like OpenBazaar would probably be like dreadfully slow. But I did some things to kind of optimize this. So one was I added every time the record returns, I just save the record I persist it to disk. And then the IPNS resolve command just has like a use cache option. And so if you use that when you call in a resolve, it just returns the last record from disk. And then in a background Go routine, it'll do the IPNS query and update the cache on disk. So this means you might not necessarily see like their most up-to-date store, but like the difference between like their last update and the previous one might just be like a small little change. So it's still like, 95% is still the same or whatever. And I think in practice, people don't change their store data that frequently to the point where it really has a major impact on the UX. And the other thing was this response is needed. This was like hard coded. I think up until I don't think it's included yet in the release, where you guys made it like an option now. It was like hard coded at 16. I was tweaking that down and down and down and down to speed up the queries, but ended up just kind of setting it on 1. It's a trade-off between whether you get an old record or how fast the query is. And again, I haven't really seen getting much old records even with it set on 1. Like, I don't think I've ever had. The worst thing that would happen would be like tried to make a purchase and it came back and gave you like an error. But I actually haven't even seen that. So it seems to be working pretty well. And even set on 1. Question?
With setting it down, have you tried like attacking the DHT and like doing an Eclipse attack or something like that, or like replaying old records? Or something?
Nah,
right.
no, I haven't done it running.
You might run into that. Like people, it may be really easy for users to do that to another store, like the silence the store.
Well, the Eclipse attack, I don't know. So it's just going to keep going until it finds a single record, right? Instead of just keep going until it finds 16.
Yeah, it's like replay of old records. That's the problem. Like if somebody updates something and somebody doesn't want to allow that to show, then they can do that.
Yeah, but again, it's like the worst case scenario is it's just like the store. You would see like an error or something. I haven't seen it, so I don't think anyone's like attacking the OpenBazaar network at the moment. But yeah, I think you're right though. It is like there's some issue with that, but. Okay, yeah, this is like pretty much my last slide. The other thing we do to kind of share data, users are going offline, there's a lot of churn. It doesn't guarantee to kind of persist. So I have this option in the config file I have a couple nodes. You can turn on your node that people can like push their data off onto you, and by default this is set to false, but on our nodes on the network we have it set to true, and so I just have this config file option where people can just push data to us and we can seed it so they go offline, and a little protocol that does it. We just kind of send the CIDs to the other node. These are all the CIDs for everything in the directory. He responds back, he parses that, finds the ones that he doesn't have, responds back with the CIDs that he needs, and then it just sends the raw block slip. So one thing that I've been playing around with that I'd like to kind of improve is to move away from the kind of config file nodes to something that's like more open and other people can participate in besides just us, and that's like with PubSub. So idea would be that if you want to receive this type of data like we would at OB1, but other people might want to as well, the data could be published on a PubSub topic, and then like anyone can subscribe to it rather than just having these nodes hard-coded in our config file. This can potentially allow us to do something. We've had some people ask like, hey, if I run a node, can I like contribute to the network? Does that like contribute to the network? And it's like, well, I mean, it doesn't really do a whole lot, but like, we can maybe have like a setting in the app where they can like allocate some disk space, and they can say, I'm willing to take a gigabyte worth of data from people and seed that out. Nice. And then the last thing is just we have this following feature that where you can follow other people, and we don't really use it for anything other than just you have a list of people you follow, and so we can have the followers like subscribe to like PubSub for other people too, and then receive their data and seed it for them as well, so it can be replicated at least along your followers. That's it.